Second day of Chapter 3 proofs. I know you're really excited, so it's time to get started. Here's our first proof. Pause the video, copy this diagram onto your paper, and when you're ready, press play, and I will go through it with you. So it says that A is parallel to B. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my diagram. A is parallel to B, and that's going to tell us which angles are congruent based on relationships. I cannot make any assumptions about angles being congruent that rely on lines C and D, only A and B. So, and I also am told that angle 13 is congruent to angle 7. Here is angle 13, and here is angle 7. You'll notice that angle 13 and angle 7 have no special relationship. They do not lie on the same transversal, so they are not alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, corresponding or same side interior angles. They are nothing. So when I solve this proof, what I want to do is find an angle that is congruent to angle 7 based upon line A and B being parallel, that has a nice special relationship with angle 13. Because when I'm able to prove that 13 is congruent or supplementary to a special angle based upon the theorems that we know, I'm going to be able to say that C is parallel to D. And there's lots of ways to do this. The way that C that's popping out to me is I notice that angle 7 has to be congruent to angle 5 because they're corresponding angles and I have lines that are parallel. And then I notice that angle 5 and angle 13 are corresponding angles. They're congruent. Once I know that, I'll be able to prove that line C is parallel to D because the only time corresponding angles are congruent is when lines are parallel. Another way to do it, I want to show you a couple ways so you can see, is that I can look and notice that angle 7 is congruent to angle 3 because I have parallel lines and these are alternate interior angles. Then I notice angle 3 and angle 13 are alternate exterior angles, and they have to be congruent because I knew that angle 7 was congruent to angle 13. So then I'd be able to prove that lines C and D are parallel. So again, lots of ways to do it. These are just two options. So I think I'm going to go with the second option, and I'm going to start writing my proof. So I'm going to have my statements and my reasons. My first statement is going to be that A is parallel to B, and that is given. And I like to work off of what I'm given right away and say what I know. I'd like to say, because A is parallel to B, that angle 7 is congruent to angle 3. In order to do that, I have to first say that they are alternate interior angles. So I'm going to do that. Angle 3 and angle 7 are alternate interior angles. And the reason for that is assumed from diagram. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm able to say that angle 3 is congruent to angle 7. And the reason for that is if lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, very nice. So now I've gotten to that point. Now I think I'm going to throw in the fact that I know that angle 13 is congruent to angle 7. And that is given. And now I can see through the transitive property that angle 3 has to be congruent to angle 13. And I'm going to put reference numbers 3 and 4 because angle 3 is congruent to angle 7 is congruent to angle 13, so angle 3 has to be congruent to angle 13. Now, if you remember from our earlier conversation, the next thing I have to say is that angle 3 and angle 13 are alternate exterior angles. So I'm going to make that statement. And the reason for that is assumed from diagram. And finally, I'm able to say that line C is parallel to D. And the reason for that is if alternate exterior angles are congruent, then lines are parallel. So there you have it, a complete proof. And all these proofs with these double sets of lines all pretty much work the same way. You have to find special relationships with the angles and with the lines that you know are parallel and the transversals, and then use the transitive property to find another relationship, and then say the lines are parallel. Now I'm going to scan down here again so you can see the completed proof. If you need more time to write it down, press pause, and when you're ready, we'll do another one. This one's a little bit different. I have these double lines, but this time I'm told that I have two sets of parallel lines, which is kind of nice. I don't know anything about the angles, but since I have these parallel lines, I'm going to mark them. A is parallel to B, and C is parallel to D. I want to prove that angle 1 is congruent to 13, and you'll notice angle 1 and angle 13 have no relationship. There's not a transversal that includes both of them. They are not alternate exterior angles or anything else for that matter. So I'm going to have to find an angle that is congruent to angle 1 that also has to be congruent to angle 13 based upon the fact that I have these two sets of parallel lines. And there's lots of ways I can do that. One way that I see right now is that angle 1 has to be congruent to angle 15 because I have parallel lines and these are alternate exterior angles. Then I see that angle 15 has to be congruent to angle 13 because they're corresponding angles, and I know that A is parallel to B. So that's one way to go. Let's see if I can find another way. Angle 1 has to be congruent to angle 3 because they're corresponding angles and I have A parallel to B. Angle 3 has to be congruent to angle 13 because C is parallel to D, and 3 and 13 are alternate exterior angles. So again, lots of ways to do it. That's just two of those, the choices. Why don't I go with, when I write my proof, I'm going to say angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and then work my way to 13. And then through the transitive property, I'm going to know angle 1 is congruent to angle 13. So let's give it a try. Let's see. I'm going to start with A being parallel to B. And based upon that fact, I'm going to say everything I know in the way that I want to go. All right, if I know A is parallel to B, I can see that angle 1 has to be congruent to angle 3 because they're corresponding angles. So I'm going to say they're corresponding angles. And that is assumed from diagram. And then I'm ready to say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. And the reason for that, oh boy, that's a lousy looking 3. One more try. The reason for that is that if lines are parallel, always remember, right, if lines are parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. So there's one. Now that I've said that, I would like to say that I know that angle 3 is congruent to angle 13. But before I do that, I have to say that C is parallel to D. That's given. And then I have to say that angle 3 and angle 13 are alternate exterior angles. And the reason for that is, again, assumed from diagram. And now that I've said that, I'm ready to say angle 3 is congruent to angle 13. That's kind of lousy looking. That's a little better. All right, and the reason is if lines are parallel, then alternate exterior angles are congruent. And now that I've said that, I'm ready to conclude my last statement, which is what I was trying to prove. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 13. And I know that through the transitive property. And I'm going to use my reference numbers. And the reference numbers that I need are 3 and 6. So there is your completed proof. If you need more time to write it down, press pause, and then when you're ready, press play, and we'll do one more proof together. And here's another one. So again, I'm starting out with a double set of parallel lines, and I want to prove that 9 and 6 are supplementary. Let's check that out. Here's angle 9, and here's angle 6. They have no special relationship, but I do know the lines are parallel. So what I want to do is I want to find an angle that is congruent to angle 9, but is supplementary to angle 6, because then I'll be able to use the congruent supplements theorem that says if two angles are congruent, then they are supplementary to the same angle. So when I look at this, I'm going to mark my lines parallel. Very important, because I don't know about any of these relationships unless I have parallel lines. So right away I notice that angle 6 has to be supplementary to angle 7 because they are same side interior angles, and I know P is parallel to Q. I also then further notice that angle 7 and angle 9 are alternate interior angles, and those have to be congruent because I have these nice parallel lines here. And then I'm going to be able to say that 9 is supplementary to angle 6 due to the congruent supplements theorem. So let's give that a try. Here's my statements and my reasons. Actually, I think I want to make this smaller. Ooh. And my parallel marks are going out the door, but whatever, I'll erase and I'll write them again. All right, so statements and reasons. Now I can move this up a little bit and I'll have more room to write. So first, I would like to say that angle 9 and angle 7 are congruent. And again, those were alternate interior angles. But first, I'm going to say that S is parallel to T, because unless I know that, I don't know they're congruent. That's given. The next thing is I'm going to say angle 7 and angle 9 are alternate interior angles. assume from diagram. And then I'm able to say they're congruent. Angle 7 is congruent to angle 9. If lines are parallel, then alternate interior are congruent. Oops, I forgot the word interior, not a good thing. All right, now I know that. The next thing I need to say is angle 6 and angle 7 are supplementary. In order to do that, I need to know that P and Q are parallel. So that's given. All right, angle 7 and angle 6 are same side interior angles, so I'm going to say that. That is assumed from diagram. And now that I know that, I can say that angle 7 and angle 6 are supplementary. And the reason for that is if lines are parallel, then same side interior angles are supplementary. Oh, I'm so close now. What I want to show is that angle 9 and angle 6 are supplementary. And you can see that angle 9 is congruent to angle 7. Angle 7 is congruent to angle 6. So therefore, angle 9 and angle 6 are supplementary. So one more reason. Angle 9 and angle 6 are supplementary. And the reason is if angles are congruent, then they are supplementary to the same angle. Oops, I wrote then twice. They are supplementary to the same angle. Okay, there you go. There's another completed proof. I wonder if I can make this smaller so you can see it all at one time. Let's give that a try. So group it. I have to do that down here as well. Oops, don't want that. Okay, let's try one more time. Group it together, and then you'll be able to see it all at once. There we go. There's the whole proof. So if you don't have it all written down, pause your video and copy it. And then you are ready to try a few proofs of your own. And that's on Schoology. Whatever you do not finish is homework. Have a wonderful day.